What's up, everyone? Welcome back to NewsDecoded, where we bring you the dark corners that'll absolutely blow your mind and change everything you thought you knew about American politics. I'm your host, and today we've got a story that's so explosive, so revealing, that it's going to make you question everything you've been told about justice in America. Before we dive into this absolutely mind-bending legal bombshell, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell, because stories like this are exactly why mainstream media doesn't want you watching independent creators like us. Listen up, folks. What I'm about to tell you isn't just another political story. This is a full-blown constitutional crisis in the making, and it involves Donald Trump, the Department of Justice, and a fired prosecutor who might literally hold the keys to exposing the biggest cover-up in American political history. Get this, and I want you to really focus on the timeline here because the timing is everything. They just fired Maureen Comey, who happens to be the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, just days before they're about to cut what sources are calling a sweetheart deal with Ghislaine Maxwell. Coincidence? There's no way in hell this is a coincidence, and I'm going to break down exactly why this is the smoking gun we've all been waiting for. Here's what's absolutely blowing legal experts' minds right now, and why this story should be front-page news on every newspaper in America. Maureen Comey wasn't just any prosecutor. She was the lead prosecutor who had all the dirt, all the evidence, all the inside information on the Epstein-Maxwell case. We're talking about someone who spent over a decade building this case from the ground up. She knew every witness, every piece of evidence, every connection, every dirty secret that came out of that investigation. But here's where this story gets absolutely insane, and I need you to understand just how calculated this move really was. They didn't fire Maureen Comey when Trump first took office 6 months ago. They let her continue working in the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office for a full 6 months during Trump's term. She was, by all accounts, a highly regarded, well-respected, experienced prosecutor who had earned her position through merit and dedication to justice. So why fire her now? Why wait exactly 6 months? Here's the bombshell. They waited until precisely 1 week before Todd Blanch, Trump's hand-picked DOJ official, was scheduled to sit down and interview Ghislaine Maxwell. 1 week. The timing here isn't just suspicious, it's a smoking gun that points directly to a massive obstruction of justice scheme. Let me break down why this matters so much, because this is where the legal expertise comes in. When federal prosecutors want to debrief a defendant like Ghislaine Maxwell, and debrief is the technical term they use, the lead prosecutor absolutely has to be present. Why? Because the lead prosecutor is literally the only person who knows the case well enough to instantly detect if the defendant is lying or telling the truth. Think about this logically. Maureen Comey spent years building every aspect of this case. She interviewed witnesses, she analyzed evidence, she knew every detail of Jeffrey Epstein's operation and Ghislaine Maxwell's role in it. She could spot a lie from Maxwell in seconds because she knew what questions to ask and what answers to expect. She was the institutional memory of this entire investigation. Todd Blanch, on the other hand, he knows absolutely nothing about the Epstein investigation. He wasn't involved in the original investigation. He wasn't part of the indictments. He wasn't there for Maxwell's prosecution. He's walking into that interview room blind, which is exactly what they want. So what does newly confirmed Attorney General Pam Bondi do? She fires the one person who could expose their games, call out their lies, and ensure that justice is actually served. It's like removing the referee right before the championship game starts. Except in this case, the stakes are American democracy itself. But here's the plot twist that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. And this is why I think they might have just made the biggest tactical error in political history. By firing Maureen Comey, they might have just unleashed their absolute worst nightmare. See, when Maureen Comey was a DOJ employee, she was bound by strict regulations that prevented her from speaking to the press about anything related to her cases. That's standard procedure for federal prosecutors. They don't talk to media, they don't give interviews, they don't comment publicly on their work unless specifically authorized by their U.S. Attorney and the Public Affairs Office. For decades, that's been the ironclad rule that keeps prosecutors focused on their cases rather than publicity. But now she's a private citizen, and those restrictions have been lifted. She's free to speak publicly about everything in the Epstein-Maxwell case that isn't specifically protected by grand jury secrecy rules. And trust me when I tell you, there's a lot of material that isn't covered by those secrecy protections. We're talking about FBI evidence collected during search warrants of Epstein's private island, his Manhattan mansion, his other properties. We're talking about videotapes. And yes, multiple sources have confirmed there are videotapes. We're talking about DVDs that have been referenced in various court documents and news reports. We're talking about literally storage rooms full of Epstein files that detail his operation, his connections, his clients, his methods, evidence that could implicate dozens of powerful people. Legal expert Glenn Kirshner, who spent decades as a federal prosecutor and knows exactly how these cases work, breaks this down perfectly. If Todd Blanch comes out of that Maxwell interview and tries to tell the American public that Ghislaine Maxwell cleared Trump of all wrongdoing while conveniently implicating a bunch of Democrats, Maureen Comey will know instantly whether those claims are truthful or fabricated. And now, for the first time, she actually has the legal freedom to say something about it. This creates an absolutely explosive situation. Imagine this scenario, and I think this is exactly what's going to happen. Trump's DOJ arranges this sweetheart deal with Maxwell. She gives them some carefully scripted testimony that clears Trump and throws his political enemies under the bus. And then they hold a press conference announcing these shocking revelations. But sitting somewhere, watching all of this unfold, is Maureen Comey, who knows the real evidence, who knows what Maxwell actually told prosecutors during her original cooperation discussions, who knows which parts of the story are being conveniently omitted or twisted. The million-dollar question is, will she speak out, knowing full well that Trump will unleash absolute hell on her, like he did to her father, James Comey? Here's what I think, and I base this on everything we know about her character and background. She didn't become a federal prosecutor because the job was easy or safe. She didn't spend a decade building complex criminal cases because she wanted to avoid difficult situations. People who take on these roles do it because they believe in justice, because they're willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. If she does decide to speak out, and I think there's a very good chance she will, she'll be joining an incredibly distinguished group of Americans who chose principle over convenience. We're talking about people like Liz Cheney, who sacrificed her political career to tell the truth about January 6th. We're talking about Adam Kinzinger, who faced death threats and lost his seat in Congress because he refused to go along with Trump's lies. We're talking about prosecutors like Letitia James and Alvin Bragg, who faced constant attacks and threats because they pursued cases against Trump based on evidence and law. She'll also be joining the ranks of federal judges, including judges appointed by Republican presidents and even by Trump himself, who Trump routinely attacks as radical left-wing lunatics simply because they rule based on law rather than political loyalty. These are all people who understand that there are principles worth defending even when the personal cost is high. But here's the beautiful irony in all of this, and it's something that shows just how short-sighted and ultimately self-destructive Trump's approach really is. They thought firing Maureen Comey would eliminate a threat, but they might have just created their biggest nightmare. Sometimes the cover-up really is worse than the original crime, and this has all the hallmarks of exactly that kind of strategic blunder. Think about what they've actually accomplished here. Instead of having one prosecutor bound by DOJ regulations who couldn't speak publicly even if she wanted to, they now have a highly credible former federal prosecutor with a decade of experience on the Epstein case who can speak freely about everything she knows. They've essentially weaponized their own opposition. And let's talk about the credibility factor here, because this is crucial. Maureen Comey isn't some partisan political operative or media personality looking for attention. She's a career prosecutor with an impeccable reputation who spent years methodically building one of the most important criminal cases in recent American history. When she speaks, if she chooses to speak, people will listen, and more importantly, people will believe her. The legal implications here are staggering. If Trump does try to defame Maureen Comey after she speaks out, and let's be honest, we all know he will, she might actually have legal recourse. Unlike criminal cases, where Trump now enjoys broad immunity thanks to that Supreme Court decision, defamation is a civil matter. Just ask E. Jean Carroll, who successfully sued Trump for defamatory statements he made while he was president. The key legal principle is that if a government official, including the president, acts outside the scope of their official duties, their immunity can be challenged. So here we are, folks. We are watching what could be the setup for the most important political and legal confrontation of our time. On one side, you have a Trump administration that's clearly trying to manipulate the justice system to protect the president and attack his enemies. On the other side, you have a former federal prosecutor who knows where all the bodies are buried and now has the freedom to talk about it. The stakes couldn't be higher. We're not just talking about one case or one scandal. We're talking about whether the American justice system can function independently, whether the rule of law means anything, whether truth can survive in an era of unprecedented political corruption and manipulation. This story is developing rapidly, and I guarantee you the mainstream media is going to try to ignore it or downplay it because it doesn't fit their narrative. That's exactly why channels like ours are so important. We're not beholden to corporate interests or political parties. We're here to tell you the truth, no matter how uncomfortable that truth might be for the powerful people who don't want you to know it. Don't let them bury this story. Share this video with everyone you know. Hit that like button to boost it in the algorithm. Subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any updates as this incredible story unfolds. And most importantly, stay engaged, stay informed, and stay ready to demand accountability from the people who are supposed to serve the American people, not their own corrupt interests. This could be the moment that changes everything. Don't let them tell you it doesn't matter. It matters more than anything.